Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
On the broadcast tonight, I'm going to read for you a full chapter, an entire chapter from my new book, Sacred Cows, a lighthearted look at belief and tradition around the world. It releases officially in April, and I am this close to seeing all of this sort of come to fruition. I'm excited. I'm terrified. I'm nervous. I really want it to do well. I want people to respond positively. You know how it is. I mean, you're putting yourself out there. But it was about a year and a half ago. I was thinking to myself, we're always talking about the crazy world we live in and the crazy quote-unquote fringe things that people do in the name of religion, in the name of tradition, in the name of culture. It's always been done this way, right? And the people in mainstream faiths, Christianity, whatever, look at the weird stuff, what they call the weird stuff. Like people who, drag a live goat up to the top of a church tower and toss it off so it can be caught by a crowd, because only then will good luck come to the tribe, that kind of thing. They say, that's crazy. They look at fortune tellers, the psychics, psychic phenomena. They say, that's crazy. They look at the cargo cults of the South Pacific and snake-handling churches and magic Mormon underwear and, the penis parades of Kawasaki, Japan, those types of things. And they say, that's crazy. And I have this sort of ulterior motive. I want Sacred Cows to be a fun and informative and entertaining read for the atheist, for the free thinker. I want you to pick it up and have a good time. And it's like a humor book with facts in it. It's designed to entertain first, but it also just has some information in there. It's really a pinball machine around the world. And to sort of buttress that particular flavor, I brought in an illustrator for Sacred Cows. His name is Vince DePorter, and he's drawn for SpongeBob SquarePants. He's drawn for DC Comics and much, much more. The man is a genius. I had a lot of people who submitted their art, hugely talented people send me their artwork and their paintings and their drawings and all of their stuff. And it was so hard to pick. But when I saw Vince's stuff, it's like he crawled into my skull and knew exactly what I was going for. And so I brought him on, and he's done 50 plus illustrations just for this book. And they are wild and they're funny. And it just takes everything to a whole other level. And so I have this hope that outside of the atheist or the freethinker or whatever reading it and having a good time, I really want to see Sacred Cows end up in the hands of a non-atheist. Whether they buy it or whether they borrow it from a heathen friend of theirs. But it ends up in their hand and they start reading and they're like, oh yeah, this is crazy. This snake handling stuff over in the Appalachia Hills, that's insanity. That's insanity. Or when they read about, chakras and astral travel and, color auras, to determine good health, or the E-meters of Scientology, or any of the number of things that the book covers. And it's wild and it's random and it's just all over the place. That they'll say, that's crazy. But subtly under the surface, the connection is being made. The dots are being connected. That, your quote-unquote mainstream faith really isn't any less insane. Right? The same people who say that the origin story of the universe in Scientology, that I think all the Thetans simultaneously created the universe and they were chased to Earth by Xenu, the intergalactic overlord, and now they transmigrate as kind of souls from body to body. Well, that's not all that different from a wizard who created the universe in a scenario involving a dirt man and a rib woman and a talking reptile. And that we are all living spirits or souls inside these sort of clumsy physical shells. And one day we will pass on, right? Our own Thetan will pass on. Is it Thetan or Thetan? I think it's Thetan. Will pass on. And, I'm drawing those connections. The Christians are laughing at the Mormons. The Mormons are laughing at the Scientologists. The Scientologists are laughing at the Satanists. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's pointing their finger. And the book is designed so that as we sort of look through the microscope at sacred things, the crazy shit people do in the name of what is sacred. It's funny. I went on social media, I went on Facebook. And so I asked our community, I said, look, is there anything that's sacred out there? I mean, what's your perspective? Is there anything genuinely sacred? And a few people chimed in with some really good stuff. Karen said, to me, the word means something you hold personally important that may mean very little or nothing to the rest of the world. Gage said, when I think of something being sacred, I think more along the lines of it being cherished or sentimental. Zane said, sacred is just a word used to prohibit things that people don't want. Marriage is sacred, so no gays can marry. Church is sacred, so be respectful. God is sacred, so don't sully his name. My virtues are sacred to me, yet I don't see everyone following my values. That kind of stuff. That seemed to be a recurring theme. When you call something sacred, you're essentially putting up a barbed wire fence around it, and you're saying, this is off limits, this is untouchable. Well, are there any sacred cows? You probably already know my answer to the question, as you already know your own answer to the question. And I think, honestly, a lot of the stuff, the more quote-unquote sacred it is, the more ripe it is to be examined and perhaps even lampooned. That's what sacred cows does. And I really do want to see somebody who's a devout Sunday go-to-meeting Christian pick it up because they're having fun reading about the origin story of the Latter-day Saints Church and the symbols on magic Mormon underwear. And they're reading about Orthodox Jews who have to pull light bulbs out of ovens because God told them to on the Sabbath, or before the Sabbath, actually. People who toss babies off of church roofs because the baby must be blessed in this way, that kind of. They're pointing their finger going, this is insane. My hope is that we will then be able to redirect the area of focus inward and say, well, actually, take a fresh look at what you consider sacred. Take a fresh look at the stuff that you do that you think is quote-unquote normal. It really ain't all that different. So Sacred Cows releases. It's going to be on Amazon. It's going to be on Barnes & Noble. It will be on Kindle and Nook. And again, it releases in April. There will be an audiobook probably closer to summer. But I find it tragic. Even though I love audiobooks, I'm looking forward to recording the audiobook. I hope people support the audiobook so they can listen while they're working out or traveling or doing whatever. But if you do the audio version, while you will get that extra flavor of having the author read the stuff, you're going to miss all the illustrations that Vince DePorter did. You're not going to be able to see them, and they are beautiful. They're just so freaking awesome. And I'm going to talk to Vince here in just a second before I read the chapter, and I just kind of want him to weigh in. He's just so good at what he does. I can't draw. I have so few gifts. I think it's important to know what you're good at. I can tell a story. I'm a storyteller. I'm kind of a ham. I can do that. But to paint or to draw, oh my goodness. It's a dream. And I tried, and it was terrible. It's just awful. To be able to draw and to be able to play the Spanish guitar. Those are two things that I just, if you believed in God, have you heard that saying that says you can't put in what God left out? Well, I don't believe in the God part, but I mean, some natural abilities are there and others are, how much time do you really want to spend trying to cultivate what you may not be able to do? That kind of deal. So Vince's stuff is really, really good. And he's on the line. He's been kind enough to spend a few minutes with me tonight before I read this chapter. Vince, is it true you were one of the first to draw for SpongeBob SquarePants?
Correct. Yes, I was the first one to draw SpongeBob in a Nickelodeon magazine. I think it was in 98 or 99. I've been writing and drawing for SpongeBob for now, 15 years.
Is it true that you've drawn Batman for DC Comics, or what did you draw for DC Comics? Help me out.
I did a lot for DC Comics. I worked on a lot of Cartoon Network stuff like Ed, Edd and Eddy and things like that. But I did a lot of Batman, Superman licensing stuff, which is not comic books per se. It's the T-shirts you used to see, the lunch boxes, etc. So that was really interesting. I mean, so I did the animation Batman. I also worked on Batman Beyond, a new character that didn't last long, unfortunately. But I did a lot of that. But I especially, for DC Comics, became one of the artists for Scooby-Doo, even the cover artist for over a year. I worked on Scooby-Doo for 16 years, actually.
Hey, Vince, what's your take on Ben Affleck as the new Batman coming up? I mean, when you heard the news, come on, what were you thinking? Yeah, great idea. He's got a great chin, or this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Well, what was your take?
My take was, oh my God.
I mean, he might pull it off. I don't know.
I think he can. You know what? I give people chances. Do you know that when the first Batman with Tim Burton came out, I did not see Michael Keaton as Batman. I thought he didn't have the face for it. And he is to this day my favorite Batman for the movies. I'm not a big fan of the Nolan Batman because I think he made everything so serious. I like the more campy Batman. I'm a big fan of the show in 68. So I thought Tim Burton did the best ever, and so did Keaton. Now, Ben Affleck, I think, can pull it off this set. I would be unfair to him if I thought that it's a little bit of a fad to say, Ben Affleck is not going to make it in Batman. So,
well, yeah, my thing is, I think he's got the look. I think he can fill out the mask and the costume. I'm a little concerned about the voice. I know Batman's a strong, dark character. But, it's funny. When Heath Ledger was announced as the Joker in Nolan's second film, I was like, Heath Ledger, the guy from A Knight's Tale? I don't get it. And now I can't picture anybody else.
Yeah, he did a great
that
job.
part, So, we should give it a shot. I totally get that. Well,
it's about the writing anyways.
It's about storytelling.
Yes, it's about storytelling because look at George Clooney, for me, was the best looking Batman, Bruce Wayne ever. And the writing of that movie was, I can't say it online.
You can say it. I totally understand.
It was pure shit. It was horrible.
Horrible. Yeah. I remember.
And it's not Clooney's fault.
I remember it's like watching The Death of a Friend.
Oh, yeah.
You watch one of these, you just like, the apple has fallen so far from the tree. Joel Schumacher just destroyed. He turned the entire Batman franchise into this weird sort of neon dance party thing. I don't know what.
And I admit I'm guilty of having worked on the licensing of that movie. But hey, I had to feed my kids.
He sold his soul. Sold his soul, my friend.
You betcha.
Talk to me about the work you did for Sacred Cows. And is this shameless self-promotion? Fine. But I wanted to bring Vince on to talk about his artwork because you have a style, you have a flavor, you have good thick line work. Is that how artists talk? You have great lines.
That's correct. I guess my influences are both from Europe because that's where I started my career. And I'm a big fan of European comic books and also a big fan of American comic books. So I think I'm a little bit the bastard of comics in the sense that I do borrow from all styles. But my big fun is to be very careful with my ink work. So you might have noticed that I really care about the line and how it looks. It has to be thin and thick and so forth.
And you have a real fire in your belly about religious nonsense. I mean,
yes.
You call yourself an atheist, Vince?
I do. I know it's a good measure to say that atheism is not the best word, but it's out there.
You don't believe in a deity. I think it fits, right? Right.
It fits, and I am, I wear it proudly. I mean, you have to know that I was a minister for years, and my big thing was studying the Bible in depth, and as it always happens when you really study very carefully the Bible, you become an atheist.
How long were you a minister, man? I didn't know that about you.
Oh, yeah, for years. I was brought up a Jehovah's Witness by my parents. And so you can imagine there how fundamentalist it is, But I embraced it because I don't know if you felt the same, because I know you were in the same position, but I had the pats on the back. I gave great talks. I'm a good public speaker when it comes to biblical stuff. And I was kind of celebrated in my congregation and more. And so you kind of feel that you're in your place. And I had a very hard time when I realized that it was all bullshit. It was really, really hard. I had a depression that lasted almost 4 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
It was a tough conversion.
With the Jehovah's Witness thing, did you have to go through the shunning? Was it that intense in your circle?
Well, some did. I'm kind of sneaky that way. I really slowly got off the boat to the point where some shunned me, but my mom, for example, and sister, who are still Jehovah's Witnesses, should normally technically shun me, and they don't, and we call each other every 2 days. So I have never been disfellowshipped. That's what they call it, or excommunicated. I have never had that. So that's the excuse my mom and sister have, so they can talk to me.
So you go from SpongeBob to illustrating, which is essentially an atheist tome, which exposes and sort of lampoons crazy beliefs and traditions worldwide. When I send you a request that says, look, I need you to show 3 dudes in the Philippines being nailed to crosses next to gift shops where they're selling the crucifixion nails. Can you come up with, what did you think I was insane, or were you glad to sort of get on this particular train? It had to have been odd to receive those kinds of requests, because there's a shit ton of these things in the book, just odd, bizarre angles, ways to look at supposedly sacred beliefs. What was your take on it?
Well, first, your listeners might not know it, but I'm a big fan, first of all. So I really wanted to do that book with you, to be honest, and for 2 reasons. One's because, the first thing is I really respect your work, and you make me laugh. But the second thing is I needed to get out there. I wanted to be loud about my atheism because I think religion is what Hitchens said. It's a poison. It poisons everything.
There's something about the way the illustrations tied in with the text of the chapters that I think is just a 1-2 punch. I am so jazzed, and I'm honored, my friend, that you lended your talents to this sucker. So for your time and for your talents and for helping this, this humble author realize a dream, like I said in the book acknowledgments, thanks, man. You are greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much.
So I went on social media, went on Facebook, and I said, all right, what chapter do you think I should read on the show, on the podcast? If I'm going to pick one of 19, which one do you think? Should I read about the Church of Euthanasia? Because that's part of the book. We talk about the Church of Euthanasia. You want to hear about the Christmas Demon, the Church of Satan, the cargo cults of Tana, fortune tellers, the psychics, Scientology, and we just sort of threw some out. And most people wanted me to do a chapter that I call The Order, the Doctrine, and the Dude. It is chapter 16 of 19. I think it's 16. No, it's 17 of 19. And it speaks to Jediism, which is a thing. And so anyway, I'm going to read the chapter. If you like what you hear, I would encourage you to go to sacredcowsbook.com, because I'm doing a pre-order. The beauty of a pre-order is that until the book releases, I'm able to make an advance thing available to you, and all the advanced pre-ordered books will go sort of through my fingers, which means I get a chance to sign them and personalize them to you if you would like. And so all the pre-orders have that option. Once they go to Amazon, it's sort of out of my hands. But a lot of people for Deconverted wanted a signed copy. They were so sweet and so gracious, and I was so flattered to be able to do that. And I'm going to make that available here at sacredcowsbook.com for the pre-orders. And that's a temporary, limited time kind of thing, okay? Because once it releases to the public, then they no longer go through my hands, and it's all kind of out there. Let me read the chapter. We'll see how we did, okay? The chapter is called The Order, the Doctrine, and the Dude. As a casual student of faith and philosophy, and a lifelong fan of Star Wars, I recently became aware of a Jedi Order far beyond the multiplexes and video stores. For some, the Jedi are merely fictional heroes from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But for others, Jedi is a way of life, a code of conduct, a higher calling. Hence, a series of sci-fi movies has spawned a very real and non-theistic religion, branching into several, quote, denominations that charge each member to be a guardian of peace, honor, and justice here on 21st century planet Earth. It's called Jediism. And there's an awesome illustration here that shows two Jedis and they're crossing the lightsabers into a cross. That's just awesome. Vince just did a great job. Before we get into the details, let me make something perfectly clear. When I refer to Star Wars, in no way am I referencing the cretinous, pathetic, awful, sad, incompetently produced, soul-sucking piles of bantha butter that are the prequel films. With all due respect to George Lucas, I've chosen to believe that he died peacefully in his sleep back in 1997. And as a result, he was never allowed to foist upon the public blasphemies like space taxes, Jar Jar, battle droids, Jake Lloyd, midi-chlorians, geisha queens, prophecies, digital Yodas, lightsaber orgies, iguana horses, younglings, the murder by dismemberment of younglings, clones, a flying R2-D2, Mace Windu, and any other character whose name sounds like a brand of yo-yo. No, the prequel films never happened, and as such, the fond recollections of the Star Wars from our childhood remain safe and unspoiled. And come to think of it, let's move that RIP date back to 1984, which will prevent another ill-fated George Lucas production, Howard the Duck. You can thank me later. In the classic Star Wars trilogy, a Jedi wasn't a character so much as an aspiration, a higher goal to be attained, and millions of wide-eyed kids ached to trade places with Luke Skywalker as he abandoned his bland, humdrum existence on Tatooine for a life of challenge, discovery, adventure, and heroism. Actually, adults connected with this fantasy as much as the children, as anyone who's ever felt trapped in an office space hell of repetition, paperwork, and skull-numbing monotony has dreamed of breaking out and putting a bland, boring existence in the rearview mirror. According to the Star Wars Wikipedia page, the Jedi Order, quote, was an ancient monastic peacekeeping organization unified by its belief and observance in the Force, specifically the light side. The Jedi were the guardians of peace and justice in the Galactic Republic, unquote. Jediism surprisingly doesn't hold a strict allegiance to the holy canon of Star Wars, nor is it merely a churchy fan club. These folks don't just sit around arguing whether or not the Millennium Falcon could actually make the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. Geek hint, by the way, it can't because parsecs are units of light travel distance and not units of time. Helpful input there. Or the specs of moisture evaporators, or why stormtrooper armor appeared to be made out of rice paper, or whether they'd rather be trapped on a deserted island with hair bun Leia, snowsuit Leia, or slave girl Leia. Those topics are for fan clubs. This is the serious business of Jediism. And one of the most prominent branches, denominations, of Jediism is the Temple of the Jedi Order. The Temple of the Jedi Order has no deity, no holy book, no physical building, no significant infrastructure, and it claims no superiority or mutual exclusivity regarding other religious beliefs. Where the Lucasfilm Jedi spent years honing themselves to achieve physical and spiritual transcendence, the Temple of the Jedi Order candidates need only a few seconds to register a free account and pledge allegiance to the Temple doctrine. The Temple of the Jedi Order believe, and I actually have these beliefs bullet-pointed on the website, and I'll go through them here. They believe in the Force and in the inherent worth of all life within it. In the sanctity of the human person, we oppose the use of torture and cruel or unusual punishment, including the death penalty. They believe in a society governed by laws grounded in reason and compassion, not in fear or prejudice. in a society that does not discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or circumstances of birth such as gender, ethnicity, and national origin. They believe in the ethic of reciprocity and how moral concepts are not absolute but vary by culture, religion, and over time. They believe in the positive influence of spiritual growth and awareness on society, in the importance of freedom of conscience and self-determination within religious, political, and other structures, in the separation of religion and government, and the freedoms of speech, association, and expression. Outside of occasional references to things like spiritual awareness, the Temple of the Jedi Order actually promotes rather humanistic philosophies, govern with reason and compassion, oppose cruelty and injustice, fight discrimination and bigotry, keep the church and state boundary intact, live a moral life, develop knowledge and wisdom. That's good stuff. But then suddenly, the Temple of the Jedi Order slides into a weird, vague mysticism with a head-scratcher of an orthodox code, which says, there is no emotion, there is peace, there is no ignorance, there is knowledge, there is no passion, there is serenity, there is no chaos, there is harmony, there is no death, there is the Force. The 16 teachings tout the merits of tuning one's mind, of achieving clarity through meditation and contemplation, of remaining fluid and adaptable, of being patient, of having integrity, of demonstrating love and compassion, of serving humanity, and ultimately achieving, quote, eternal life through the Force, whatever that means. Their 21 maxims promote things like loyalty, focus, harmony, discipline, pure motive, prowess, and nobility, these attributes wrapped in the faith of the Force. Honestly, it's like George Lucas, Christopher Hitchens, Gandhi, and Deepak Chopra met at a bar, got completely schnockered, and then scribbled this stuff on a napkin. The Temple of the Jedi Order offers an initiate program which touches on myths, takes a comparative look at world religions, although the Force really needs to tell these folks that atheism isn't a religion, and provides an in-depth study of the Temple of the Jedi Order creed and code. Its site provides sermons with titles like Darkness, A Basket of Eggs, A Story of Us, Mental Healing, and The Root of All Fear, each message written by a licensed and ordained Jedi minister. Jedi ministers are actual clergy. Their licenses are recognized in all 50 U.S. states. They can officiate at weddings and conduct religious ceremonies. Ordination requires actual clerical training through the Jedi Seminary and a vote by an actual Jedi Council. Upon approval, the candidate becomes an official Minister of the Force, which undoubtedly looks totally badass on a business card. It must be said that the Temple of the Jedi Order is not the only organization of its kind. JediChurch.org also offers free membership with the optional $20 certificate bearing your name. Other options for the aspiring apprentice include the Jedi website, the Jedi Academy Online, Order of the Jedi, and Temple of the Jedi Force, the doctrines of each being a similar mashup of the existential, the mystic, and the humanistic. As I understand it, there's been frustration with Jediism that it isn't taken seriously by the public, because it's a religion based on an obviously fictitious and fantastical story. I find the rejection of Jediism rather hypocritical, especially when you take a comparative look at Jediism against mainstream faiths like Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. After all, Jediism doesn't assert that penguins walked thousands of miles to board a boat built by a 600-year-old man in the desert. That's straight out of the book of Genesis. Or that humans were created from a clot of blood, transformed out of sperm harvested between the backbone and ribs. That's in the Quran. Or that one can wish upon a magic cow. Of course, we're talking about Hinduism. If it's all relative, Jediism comes off as rather pedestrian, don't you think? And in case you were curious, it's not the only group with roots in contemporary film. Those who prefer Shatner over Skywalker can browse the web to discover a number of Star Trek-related worldviews, including humanism, Vulcan philosophy, and the warrior traditions of the Klingons. On a related note, Christian fans of Star Trek will be delighted to hear that the biblical book of Psalms has been translated into Klingon. Gurtach, gach, de loch, tab I dach, de kles vol de milch. That's Psalm 1:1, and I have no idea if I said it right. It's actually funnier in print. There's like no vowels. It's weird. Of course, as Star Trek was conceived by the late Gene Roddenberry, an atheist with only disdain for Christianity, this particular melding of fictions probably has him rolling in his grave. Fans of the Coen brothers classic, The Big Lebowski, can abide in the relaxing zen of Dudeism, a mishmash of Taoism and Epicureanism which promotes a go-with-the-flow mentality in all things. In our highly materialistic world, where a lack of physical wealth and possessions can cause some to feel inferior, Dudeists instead embrace simple pleasures, like reading a book, chilling with friends, enjoying a favorite food, walking the dog, taking a bath, lounging in comfortable clothes, and of course, bowling. A modest, stress-free, pain-free life is a Dudeist heaven. And while Dudeism sounds like merely an inside joke for Lebowski aficionados, it's apparently a thing, with 250,000 Dudeist priests ordained into the Church of the Latter-day Dude. Upon receiving this information, I immediately logged on to Dudeism.com and had myself ordained. It didn't cost me a dime, and the site only required that I take a vow and affirmation. Here's the vow. Dudeist vow, I vowed to uphold the principles of Dudeism, to just take it easy, to be dude, which is easygoing, to be dude to everyone I meet, and to keep my mind limber. My affirmation, I affirm that this ordination is for me and not for someone else, or my dog or whatever. And that was it. Now, just like the Jedi ministers of the Force, I am clergy. And in the text of the book, I actually have a print graphic of my Dudeist certificate of ordination into the ministry, dated November the 10th, 2014. Basking in my post-ordination glow, I pondered having myself renamed, like the Pope. I also considered marching into the bedroom and insisting my wife address me as Father, but that just seemed kind of creepy. What moniker fit my newly elevated clerical status? Pastor, minister, bishop, rabbi, dean, deacon? And then suddenly I realized I had been complicating the simple. 2 minutes as a Dudeist priest, and I was already violating one of my church's basic tenets. I could almost hear Walter Sobchak in my skull yelling, "Over the line!" To regain my bliss, I browsed the website for a while, and I was surprised to see Jesus Christ listed among the great dudes in history, alongside Lao Tzu, Snoopy, and Jerry Garcia. Their brief biography on Christ reveals that although he was born Jewish, he converted to Dudeism because the Romans and Pharisees were, quote, fucking fascists. This makes sense, as they are honoring the happy hippie, let us love one another Jesus, and not the rug pisser Jesus that created hell. That second Jesus is so very undude. Ultimately, from the doctrine of the Jedi Order to the Abide Guide of the Dudeists, we see people creatively organizing to promote health, happiness, and humanism, decorating their philosophies with their favorite films and the occasional sprinkle of woo, transforming bland, boring clerical clothing into hooded robes and pajama bottoms, and spreading a message we might all embrace, promote equality, celebrate diversity, help a stranger, make a friend, enjoy the little things, and above all, abide. Can I get an amen? And that is Chapter 17 of Sacred Cows, a lighthearted look at belief and tradition around the world. Illustrations by Vince DePorter, and then the foreword was done by Brian Dalton. You might best know him as Mr. Deity. Just a funny and amazing guy. Was so honored to have him write the foreword for the book. It officially releases in April. If you like what you heard and you'd like more, thank you so much for your support. You can go to sacredcowsbook.com, and all the pre-orders that are happening right now are eligible to get personalized autographs to you or whoever you are giving it to, and you can just leave that instruction right there. So all the advanced ones we have the chance to autograph if that sort of strikes your fancy. And then come April, you should see it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It will be on Kindle, Nook, and then the audiobook this summer. Again, the website, sacredcowsbook.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your support and encouragement, and I will see you next time on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.